If it hit tonight, what would you do? Where would you and your family go? What is the state's plan for you? Our investigation into nuclear civil defense reveals some startling facts. For instance, only a small percentage of us will survive an attack, and almost none of us who do survive have any idea of what to do to stay alive after the initial blast. There is no clear plan of evacuation for over 90% of the state's citizens, all because the government in Washington isn't helping local officials. Sam Sloan is Alabama's Civil Defense Director.
We're very well prepared for a hurricane-type disaster, but I think we're totally inadequately prepared for the atomic-type or the nuclear attack disaster, which of course would be the ultimate disaster that this country could ever face.
We asked Governor Fob James if he knew of a plan.
In the case of a nuclear attack, of which Alabama was a target, we just aren't, we would not be prepared in the sense that there would be a bomb shelter where you could put every person in.
There are some fallout shelters in Alabama, but most are neglected, and many of us don't know where they are anyway. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting. This symbol designates a place you can go for shelter in case of a storm or attack. Civil defense officials say most of us ignore these, and many don't even know what the symbol means. A sample of area citizens confirms that.
I don't know. I thought about that just a few minutes ago when you first asked me. I live in Woodley Park, and as far as I know, the nearest fallout shelter may be 5, 6, 7 miles. I don't know where it is, and that's disturbing because that's where my family is most of the time, over around Woodley Park, and it'd be difficult to find out where it was.
I think it's at Normandale, the vicinity of Normandale, not Fieston.
No, I sure don't.
No, sir.
I have no idea.
Only fallout shelter I know of is the one up in Normandale in the basement up there.
No, I can't say I do.
I don't know, really.
I'm in Marie Cook Drive, and I don't know when the hell I'd go.
Civil defense officials say only 1% of Alabama citizens know where their shelters are, and they add that is an optimistic guess. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting. After a nuclear blast, those fortunate enough to make it to the shelters must have at least a 2-week supply of food, water, and medical supplies. We've been looking in shelters and talking to a number of people. This is what we discovered. There's no food in most of the shelters, and what medical supplies there are may not be usable. At one shelter, I found empty water cans. I checked a stack of water containers, and out of approximately 15, only 2 appear to have water in them. Food stocked in the shelters rotted years ago. It was removed, and it was 20 years old.
The plan now is to develop a system of transporting the food to the places where it's needed from the supermarkets and so forth. For example, in this area we have the Winn-Dixie stores, the Big Bear stores, and so forth, and this would be a major logistical problem to get this food to the place where it's needed.
The plan for using the grocery stores to ship food to shelters is far from being perfected, and because of the massive problem of coordination and supervision, there is serious doubt if the plan can succeed. Right now, it looks like there would be no food in the shelters for quite some time after an attack. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting. During the 1960s, there was an all-out federal effort to organize survival plans, shelter programs, and warning plans for the public. Civil defense professionals now say Washington isn't doing anything to help provide a comprehensive plan.
The federal government has a history in this area of developing a given program to be followed, passing this down to the state level, and hence we have to pass it on down to the local level. They initiate these policies or programs with minimal funding. They get them started, and then they withdraw the funding for that particular program because they shifted priorities to another program.
At a recent civil defense seminar in Michigan, 43 civil defense officials from 27 states sent a letter to federal officials. The letter charged that the present civil defense situation creates, and I'm quoting now, a hostage situation for the American people. The civil defense professionals listed two main reasons for this. One, the lack of direction and the lack of a consistent policy of civil defense preparedness to create a working civil defense program at the federal level. Number two, the lack of an adequate budget to fund even a minimum civil defense program. To correct the situation, the letter suggested that the government take the following actions. Number one, develop and implement a creditable national civil defense plans with input for state and local directors. Number two, develop a national budget to support local governments for warning systems, communications, planning, emergency operations centers, and training for both civil defense professionals and the public.
Civil defense officials at the local level told me the public thinks the government is prepared to protect them and that sufficient money is being spent to provide protection in the event of an attack. I'm told that you are wrong in believing that. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
Civil defense and military officials say the Soviet Union is and has been seriously preparing for nuclear attack. They say the Soviets have adequate shelter programs and are years ahead of this country in civil defense projects.
Their civil defense effort and their very massive development of a comprehensive civil defense program assures that they can save 80% of their population simply by relocating these people from the metropolitan and industrial areas out into the undeveloped areas, the rural areas, and that type thing. If they can do that, and there's evidence to indicate that they most surely can do it, then where is the mutual assured destruction policy then? It's left hanging. Our people are still in place, still in the target areas.
Compared to 80% of the Russians that probably could survive an attack from the United States, your survival probability figures are frightening.
10, 15%.
Is that all?
I would think so at this point. I would think that it would be extremely optimistic of us to think that we could save over 15% of the population.
How long would it take to come up with a comprehensive plan for the state of Alabama?
At the current level of funding and current level of staffing?
Yes.
10, 15 years.
A hypothetical case of the entire state being under a nuclear attack, no, the only way you could prepare for that is get yourself in the same shape that London eventually got themselves in for the air raids of World War II, as to where every person had a shelter, a bomb shelter to get into. And we do not have that. And I don't think anybody in the United States does. That's a terrible thing to think about.
Even though it would take years to prepare an adequate plan of protection for the state of Alabama, at this point, no one seems to know when even that will get started. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.